be this week?
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go rub one off. Let me turn off the camera.
We're recording now, but
I'm Bradley. I'm Tyler's penis.
I'm not cutting that out. Hey, welcome to Roundabout Cast, episode 30. We're gonna rapid fire this intro because we weren't recording. I'm your podcast host, Wheeler.
I'm Bradley. I guess I'm Tyler's penis now.
I'm Joe. I've never seen Breaking Bad.
I'm Tyler, special guest, special guy, special night, special boy.
He's also the assistant editor
we have
now.
two pieces of new. Tyler is now assistant editor. Tyler, woo. Next is, so for longer shows that are above 4 episodes, such as One Piece and JoJo's and future shows that we're planning on the podcast apps, they will have their own titles and will not be included with the full Roundabout Cast episodes. Something blame Bradley and Tyler.
We're trying new formats.
Yeah, new formats on the YouTubes.
I wanted to give our long-running series, like, One Piece, I think they kind of deserve special attention because we have a lot of fun doing it. We have a lot of episodes and a lot of people, listening to them. So we're trying out having One Piece kind of be its own show.
We don't know what we're going to do with Worm because it's at a weird spot because it's almost done. What else? Do you have any Egyptian falcons, etc., etc.? All right. Today,
all these are jokes you won't understand because it's on forever.
But we will. And that's that's what matters.
We recorded a very entertaining improv session whenever we weren't actually recording.
We were like an hour deep, and then we realized.
No, I would never allow us to get an hour deep. We're talking about Noita 2, or Noita, just Noita, Steven
Noita.
Universe, Dr. Stone, and One Piece, but that'll be its own show. Yeah. All right, Tyler, what is Noita all about? Something about Dark Souls and rocks?
We're back where we were.
So,
oh god.
Try to remember the first time you ever played a Souls game. It could be Demon, Dark Souls, it could be Bloodborne, anything like that. And you go through that tutorial, and you're like, oh, I've played video games before. When the boss is this hard, I'm just supposed to die. And it's like, no, you're supposed to kill it. And you're like, no, that's not how games go. And it's like, this is how this one is, bitch. You better deal with it. That's not how Noita exactly is, but it's how it makes you feel sometimes. So it's a pixel. It has this pixel-based physics engine, and so every pixel in the game is simulated. So obviously, it has a pixel art style. So it's like all the water, like every single pixel of water can be zapped with electricity, or every pixel of flammable gas will catch on fire.
It's something I think people really need to see. At least everyone needs to at least see some gameplay of this, even if you don't think you would ever play it. Just to fully understand what he's talking about with the simulation here. You really gotta see it to believe it.
The coolest thing about the game, so it's a roguelite. So if you like roguelites, I would say it's very, it's exactly a roguelike. There's no any progression in the game. Every time you die, you start over from the very beginning with nothing. Everything's unlocked from the get-go, and it has so much exploration in this roguelike game. It's it really takes the challenge of a player who's competent in difficult games and treats them with respect, because it's if you go out of your way to try something really ridiculous, it's oh, I'm gonna turn this entire lake of lava into blood and then swim down it because I have this perk that lets me breathe in liquids forever. It's oh, there's something actually down there. What? This isn't a barrier just to make me die or not progress. And it's oh wow, there's something actually there. It's very much rewarding for exploration.
Yeah, and you end up kind of, because of the procedural element of it and the simulation, you end up getting into some really funny predicaments. I remember you were streaming it through Discord and I was watching you, and you were in this area. I think it was a shop. There's a selection of spells and stuff like that, and you kind of blew it up on your way out, and at some point you ended up getting teleported back in there, and you got to the part where the ceiling was caved in from you blowing it up, and you're like, fuck, how am I gonna dig through this?
Yeah.
How did you dig through it?
There's this little, so that's where we talk about spells. So the game is you start off with you're this magician guy, like he's got this purple hood on, and you just start off with 2 wands. One of them has this like little magic bolt you fire, and it will deal like 1 pixel of dirt to the environment. So I dug through with that little 1 pixel magic wand. It was terrible, and it took like 30 minutes. But I was like, I'm not starting over. And then the bomb will explode everything, but it wouldn't explode that because I was out of bombs at that point actually. So I soft locked myself. But I wanted to persevere. But we're gonna talk about spells. Holy crap, this game has such a cool modular weapon system.
Ooh.
So you have a series of wands and a series of spells. Each wand has like 7 or 8 different stats on it, and then it has like a number of slots on it. So first it's like your slots, it's like, oh, it can hold 6 spells or something like that, and then it's like, are the spells randomized? So will it take 1 of any 6 of those spells, or is it not randomized and it will cast them in a certain order? You can have so much fun combining and mixing and matching spell combinations. And the way that the spells interact with the environments and everything is just so crazy. Like, I had this one wand that shot a series of bubbles around in a pentagon pattern. But I also had this perk that had homing shots on it. And I was playing with my friend, our good buddy Austin, and he goes, "You should never use the pentagonal pattern." And because obviously it shoots all your spells in a pentagon. You're not aiming or anything. But with the homing shots, it just shot a bunch of orbs out around me, and everything just that was surrounding me vanished instantly, including the environment. It was so much fun. And he's like,
go on.
He's like, it shouldn't be working, but it can work because that's how much variety you can do with this modular weapon system.
I was going to ask, what are you playing this on?
It's on PC.
Is it
it's on Steam? It's on the Humble Store. It's on itch.io and GOG.
Is it on Switch or PlayStation?
It is not on either of those at this time because it's still an early access title. I think it got launched in October or September of last year, and then they had their first update in December.
Okay.
So they're still expanding, still working on content, still very fresh, but wow, is there so much to this game, and it is beyond frustrating because it's like there's so many points in the game where you're like, oh, I'm having this really good run, and then like, oh, this box next to you exploded, and then it flung you into this pool of acid, and then the thunder god shows up and explodes you through the other side of the wall, and it's like, oh, I guess I just got Noita. That's that. I can't do anything about that.
I remember when I was watching you had some other, I think it was a spell, and essentially it summoned, whenever you used it, it summoned almost a screen's worth of water, which is terrifying because you were in an enclosed space, and it's like, well, fuck, I might drown. Fortunately, it drained out, and it's a really cool like utility spell because I don't think the water itself is going to immediately harm enemies, but you can do so many things like put fires out, extinguish lava. You can create a ton of water and then say you have like maybe an electric spell. You can use all that new water to like propagate the electricity. I thought it was just a really cool, like, I feel like the possibilities are endless.
This seems like a Bradley game. This seems like the game you wanted to make, almost.
Yeah, I actually, I followed this game whenever it was announced up till the day it released, and I got it the day it released. I played a few matches of it, and then I didn't play anymore. I don't know. I watched Tyler and Austin play it, though.
It's fun to play because, like, me and him, for, like, holiday time, we sat around and, like, we just took turns playing it. Because when you're sitting there playing it and, like, having someone watch you, it's really fun to be like, oh, you should take this spell. Or, no, you should take this spell. And, like, so you just sit there and, like, theory craft magic with your buddy.
Yeah, and the theory crafting is such a cool element to this because to compare it to other, roguelites, like, I think Spelunky is one of the, like, very standard roguelites, or maybe like Rogue Legacy.
Isaac.
Yeah, those games are kind of about learning the game. Spelunky has like a lot of base mechanics, and you get good at those. You learn to anticipate the rooms, anticipate the enemies. Noita, while there is an amount of that, a lot of it is you're going to have to experiment a lot more with these tools you have at your disposal. Like, Spelunky has those tools, but you're not going to get into that theory crafting that Tyler's talking about. Noita is going to have a lot of that, trying to figure out what magics are going to interact well together, or, like, are going to combat this particular enemy very well.
It's a lot of fun. It's $18 on Steam, I know that. But I definitely think it's worth it. Like, the amount of content you're going to get out of it is ridiculous. I think I've already put 50 hours into it, and I've only beaten a run-through once. Like, no matter how overpowered I think I am at certain times, I honestly think getting through the end has a lot of luck to do with it, to be honest. But it's still, I have a lot of fun. I, like, boot up the game at least 3 or 4 times, like, a day, and then I will end extremely frustrated and just be like, alright, I'm never playing this game again. And then I'll forget about it like an hour later, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna play a session of Noita.
That's the roguelite curse, man.
But it's a lot of fun. Go devastate the environment with some magical spells.
There you go.
There you go. Glad to hear you're liking it. And Bradley finished Steven Universe. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on that ending? You can go spoiler free. I don't think the other two care very much. Or spoiler full.
Spoiler full. Yes, this will be a full spoiler discussion of Steven Universe. So if there's any listeners who think they might want to finish the series, you can skip ahead in the audio / video / whatever media you consume.
It will be spoilers up to future episode 8, because I haven't watched 9 and 10, so don't do it, Bradley.
I finished Steven Universe. This probably won't be a super long talk. I feel like we did a lot of that last week. I wanted to kind of give my impressions of the main series finale and maybe the movie, and some of future. I kind of like Willer was saying, it might be, I don't know if controversial, but less than, it's definitely, the ending is not unanimously liked in Steven Universe. And in fact, the general vibe I've gotten is most people are unhappy in some way with the ending of the main series. I really liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. I think the last stretch of episodes have some really fucking cool action. There's a lot of stuff that was looked forward to for a long time. A lot of characters that you're like, when the hell are these people finally going to fuse? And you finally get the fusions.
One thing you didn't know that was a popular fan theory was that when all 4 of them fuse, they become the Obsidian, which is the giant statue that's behind their house, which is a long-running fan theory, and seeing that was very exciting.
Yeah, like, I had no idea. So when you brought that up to me, I thought that was really, really cool. And Obsidian was my favorite fusion in the series for about an hour and a half until I watched the movie right after finishing the series.
Steg is just a JoJo character.
Yeah, the final stretch of episodes, tons of really good action, really good character development, and we finally get to see some characters for the first time, like, obviously, White Diamond, who had one of, like, the creepiest introductions to a character in anything. I was so intimidated by this character.
It was a really good one, and her design is so fucking striking.
Yeah.
Because she's so bright that if she stands still, she just looks like a floating face, which I think is a really nice aesthetic.
Yeah. So I wanted to address some of the things that people seem to not like. A lot of people seem to not like maybe the degree to which diplomacy played a role in Steven. dealing with the diamonds, like maybe yellow and blue. Which, like, this is Steven Universe. Like, obviously, Steven's not going to go around murdering all of his enemies.
It's one of those things, like I was saying, people get so invested in this show where they're like, it has mature themes, so I want it to have a super mature ending kind of thing. And I can see it to some point where I personally, I think blue and yellow worked well because even that episode, Steven says, I've been training this whole time to learn how to mend families together, right? And that's what their whole thing was about. With white, I thought it went pretty fast. That's where I fall on that, but it's not enough to ruin the show for me, like for a lot of people.
Yeah. And, like, even if I felt like any of that went really fast, I think the reasoning behind it was fine. For blue, yellow, white, I think all of their reasons and motivations for changing their ways and following Steven, I thought all of those were sound. Like, I understood them all. There's a few of them, like maybe for yellow, I wish they would have taken like a little bit longer. I want to see a little bit more of the wheels turning in their head. But I mean, I thought it was all fine.
Part of it too is that I can see why people might have even been salty at the time, but I think Future addresses quite a bit of those concerns where it shows that they haven't fully changed and there's still a lot of work to do even 2 years after.
Yeah.
To kind of bring peace between these two races.
Yeah, in Future, I kind of got the vibe that, you know, all of Steven's work is not done. In fact, a lot of it is only beginning.
And it's weighing heavy on him. So I have a lot of fun with the Future episodes.
I know another thing with the diamonds that I saw a lot before I even finished the series. I had just seen around. I always kind of knew that at least one or two of the diamonds Steven was gonna end up allying with or being friends with in some capacity, because I remember back a few months ago when the series had actually finished, but I hadn't seen the finale, a lot of people were mad, like, oh, these are intergalactic dictators who destroyed planets and we're just gonna be okay with them, we're not gonna shatter them. Like, apparently there were a lot of people out there who wanted Steven to, like, shatter the diamonds, and I don't know. He's like...
That doesn't seem to fit with the mood or the theme of the show at all.
Yeah, it doesn't really fit with the mood of the show. I feel like a lot of that comes from there's a bunch of different, like, philosophies of justice out there, and one of them is, you know, you do bad things, you get a fitting punishment. So people are like, oh, you know, you conquer hundreds of planets, maybe that's capital punishment territory.
You could argue that other life forms they dealt with weren't like humans, to the point where, like, it took Rose Quartz seeing and meeting humans to really change on a fundamental level. So, like, to them, it was like the way that we eat animals or, you know, move animals and lower life forms out of the city so we can live. I can totally understand why it took them meeting something like Steven to, like, at least reconsider their ways and why they could be redeemable in that way.
So I've never seen Steven Universe. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but this ending sounds similar to, like, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Are there any comparisons to draw from that?
Yeah, the same way that Avatar spoilers. Y'all should watch Avatar. It's fantastic.
I think it ended in, like, 2006.
If you didn't grow up with Avatar, I don't think you grew up. So it's like,
It feels similar to Avatar in the sense that people who have a problem with how the main villain was defeated, I feel like they don't have a good grasp on what the show was trying to tell you.
yeah,
Gotcha.
it's like that. What did you think of? We talked a lot about the ending. You watched all of season 5 with this, right? I think the only parts of season 5 I was iffy on was, like, kind of the beginning, with Lars on the gem planet. But after that, I thought it picked up, especially with the best episode in the series, which is A Single Pale Rose. That was some
Single
heavy
Pale
shit.
Rose is extremely interesting, and it's fun because Steven Universe, even as far back as, like, maybe season 2 or 3, because that's when I was initially watching it. They have this fun thing they do where extremely unimportant episodes will be titled stuff like a very special episode, and it's an episode where nothing actually really happens. But then the most plot relevant episodes in the whole series will have very nondescript titles and descriptions. Like the episode in season 5 that drops, like it explains the biggest, longest running mystery in the show, and the description for the episode is Steven helps Pearl find her cell phone.
I love it. I love stuff like that.
That's very important.
I think
it was
within an 11-minute episode. It's just kind of masterful the way they tell this story. It starts off very lighthearted. And then when Steven starts receiving these text messages, it gives off an air of creepiness. And they manage the mood really well over the next few minutes, where Steven goes into Pearl's head, and the color script of this episode is amazing, where the colors start very light, and as he's moving through her head, it goes more neutral, and then suddenly he teleports to the Keyblade graveyard from Kingdom Hearts, and all of the colors are burgundy and red and black, and you're just like, oh fuck, like we're about to get into some real shit.
Is cell phone and a net like?
No, it's a cell phone.
Is that a word for something?
No, it's a literal cell phone.
But in that episode, they drop twists that change how you've seen the entire show up to this point. It's really good. And then you get that arc of the gems coming to term with the twist, and I think all of them had really strong reactions. Amethyst in particular ends up like, she goes from the least interesting gem to ending up as like an A-tier character. Still the least interesting gem, but that's just how good the rest of them end up.
Yeah, if A-tier character is the least interesting of the main bunch, you're doing something right.
Well, what did you think about the movie, so we can wrap up this segment here?
I really loved the movie.
Ooh.
The soundtrack in the movie is off the fucking chain, even by Steven Universe standards.
They had some fire songs.
Which Steven Universe standards are off the fucking chain. I think not the first song in the movie, maybe the second, where the main villain Spinel is introduced. The song "Other Friends" is a catchy as fuck song. Like, I'm kind of mad because it keeps playing in my head, and I'm afraid I'm not gonna like it as much anymore, which has not been the case so far. And also, during the choreography during that song is awesome when she pulls out her scythe and she does Monkey D. Luffy stuff where she wraps around the building and launches herself, and it's really cool.
Man, the last fight in that movie had some One Piece references that you don't even know, bro. Rebecca Sugar is said to be a One Piece fan, and you could see it.
I know Garnet did a little Gum Gum Gatling.
Garnet's been aura-oraing since season 1. So, for me, like I said last time, the first half of the movie is kind of weak because it's going through a lot of character retreads, and I don't really like Spinel in that point of the movie. But then the second half, as soon as the concert with Steg and Opal goes, the movie's just fire from that point on. That's how I feel about the movie.
Yeah. It is interesting because we introduced Spinel, and she's very immediately interesting, but then, like you said, we kind of put her in the background for the next half of the movie, which it's like, okay, we introduced the main villain and then they're irrelevant for a little while, but whenever she does become relevant again in the movie, like you said, the movie is fire from that point on. I really liked her backstory, and I've talked about one of the most interesting things in Steven Universe to me is that Steven's mother, Rose / Pink, spoiler alert, she, in the early seasons, I'd probably even say the first 4 seasons of the show, she's painted as just this absolutely unattainably perfect, loving, forgiving person. And I really love that as the show goes on, season 5, the movie, future, stuff like that, you begin to get more of a look into what her life was actually like, and you learn that not only was she not a perfect person, she actually did some really, really shitty things.
Really shitty. I think she ends up being a really complex character, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who hate her guts. She's very interesting to me.
Yeah. So by the end of the movie, I really wanted to give Spinell a hug. I really felt bad for her. But I don't. Oh yeah, she goes and lives with the diamonds, right?
I thought that was a weird ending, to where it's like, Steven's like, dude, I got too much shit to deal with. Can you go be friends with the diamonds? And then maybe I'll see you in future. Like,
And I thought it was interesting. And after hearing you talk about it a little bit, it kind of grew on me because probably it's not even close to the climax of the movie, but the emotional climax for me personally was when Steven first befriends Spinell and convinces her to, spare the Earth. And then after she does, he immediately is kind of like, okay, let's go over here and do this other thing. And she's like, okay, you're just going to forget about me? You just wanted me for this? And, he tries to backpedal. It's like, no, there's just other stuff to do right now. But obviously because of her abandonment issues, she kind of goes back and she's like, no, you never wanted to be my friend. And that was
very justified. She had very justified abandonment issues.
So I can kind of understand both of them because I was very much on Spinell's side there and I still am. But then you also brought up, it's like Steven over the past 5 seasons of this show has been shouldering dozens of burdens of his mom's mistakes. And this is another one. And it's like, maybe he doesn't need to solve all of his mom's problems.
Or you can't expect him to be her best friend immediately. He's got so much going on. I'm sure they'll end up just peachy by the end of Future and stuff, but it's just not, it was not the time for him to have to deal with something like Spinell.
Yeah, because if Steven did what I wanted him to do here initially, I could see him 20 years down the line having to balance 6 friends, which is not very feasible. So I really like the way she ended up, I think, at the end of the movie.
Tyler pulled up his Photoshop as he's editing some thumbnails, and he dragged the Steven in, and he whited out the black part, which included his hair, so it was just like a headless Steven there for a bit. Anyways, Steven Universe is great. Give it a try. I think it's a show where you'll know if you enjoy it pretty early, and then 22 episodes in, which isn't that much because they're 11-minute episodes. If you're unsure at that point still, definitely drop it at that point. But I think it's a show that will hook you pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah. If you're a person who doesn't know if you might want to watch the show, maybe my experience can give you a little bit of motivation. I think the show started airing when I was either in high school or maybe the first year of college. And as an adult, I'm still an avid cartoon watcher. I remember I was on Cartoon Network and I saw the very first advertisements for the show.
This is the exact same way I got into the show.
I saw the characters. I was like, oh, they look weird. And I remember I saw a preview of an episode and Steven had little cats on his fingers.
Yeah, it was the song where it's like, Cookie Cats, 7 episodes in this disc. It was.
I was like, oh, this show looks stupid.
Steven
I was like,
what it was for me was because I'm a One Piece fan. I saw these character designs. I was like, ooh, these are dumb One Piece character designs. And they're pretty colors, so I'm into that.
So I thought the show looked really stupid. I don't know why I'm trying to convince people to watch this after we just had a full spoiler discussion.
Whatever, we're done. Steven Universe, I like it.
I don't know. I got convinced to watch the show. I saw the Stronger Than You clip where Garnet fights Jasper.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh my god, that song was cool. That fight was cool. And then I saw the twist about Garnet, and I was like, I don't know anything about the show, but I assume that twist was really cool. And then I went in and I watched the first episode, and I was like, yeah.
Hold on. Time out. This is a reoccurring theme with Bradley.
It is.
Where he spoils himself on the most important aspect of the thing, and then he's like, oh, that seemed interesting, and then goes back.
All my
for
favorite shit, Worm, fucking Berserk, Steven Universe, I'm sure probably even other things. I'll see a huge, I'll see a twist or even the ending of the thing first before I ever even start it, and I'm like, huh, I wonder how we got there. And then I'll start it, and it ends up so like I'll get the biggest spoiler out of the way first, but I still end up loving it.
So the question is, did Bradley get a spoiler for One Piece, and that made him decide to
Well,
start reading?
Bradley spilled himself on Luffy's bounty, like immediately.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I think I was trying to Google. I wasn't even Googling his bounty. I just Googled something about Luffy, and it was like blah 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 million bounty. I was like, oh okay.
I told Bradley he's not allowed. You're not even allowed to type in searches for One Piece because there will be spoilers in certain searches. It's like don't just ask me. It just goes to show you that spoilers are not the end all be all.
Yeah, everyone spoil me on your favorite things, and maybe that'll make me.
No, I don't want to read this.
That's what I've taken. If you want Bradley to watch anything, just tell him how it ends first.
Yeah.
All right,
Bradley.
allow me to tell you the ending.
The way the Good Place ends is I don't know because a new episode
Still
came
going.
out.
Oh, it came out tonight, Joe. I'm so fucking excited.
Tyler, I like watching you make the thumbnails.
Yeah, this is fun. All right, Steven Universe done. Okay, it's been a long time coming. We're gonna talk about Dr. Stone.
Dr. Crone.
Dr. Bone.
Do we want to do an initial like 10-minute non-spoiler discussion and then like move into spoiler territory?
No, hold on. It doesn't have to be non-spoiler. Let's do a quick segment on Dr. Stone up to where the anime ended because we are going to go up after the anime. So if you're an anime only watcher, there will be a point of this video where you will have to, or podcast, where you will have to bail.
Man, I need to. I did the anime end where I thought it would?
Did anyone know? Did anyone check?
It ends, I think, at the village tournament.
No.
Oh, that's still okay. All right.
No. I know where it ends. Give me a minute and I'll confirm. But y'all go ahead and start.
Dr. Stone is a Shonen Jump manga / anime featuring your boy Senku, who is a god tier scientist that, along with the rest of the world, gets petrified in a mysterious incident, and then 3,700 years later, he wakes up and he has to restart civilization with science.
Science!
That's it.
It's
That's
cool.
it.
It's cooler than it sounds, and it already sounds really cool.
It is one of the long running genre of non-battle battle shonen, where here all of the shonen-esque conflicts are handled with scientific inventions.
Yes. It's a very unique show. I feel like they've done research on like everything that they do and everything that they say in terms of like what they're doing. And what's great about the show is that it never escalates to a point of like absolute ridiculousness. I think there are times where it comes on the board of there are times where it comes to that borderline, but like it's not hard to kind of stretch your imagination a little bit. Like, okay, yeah, they were able to do that. They could, yeah, sure, why not?
I know the writer.
Yeah,
he's mentioned that he has fact checkers for stuff like geography or geology and stuff like that, and kind of like Joe said, there may be some parts where you have to stretch your imagination a little bit, but I think for a lot of the things the characters create, I think they make a very well reasoned step-by-step process where it's believable they could do the things they did.
They will even say like, hey, it's not gonna be perfect because of XYZ, and this is why like probably we can only do it this one time and not every other time to make something bigger.
They use the difficulty of making some stuff as like a limiter, and then they ride around it, which I think is a smart way to do it. There's a scientific advisor to the series. He's in every chapter basically it's like advisor Kurae or something. So he definitely is in contact with someone who knows a lot about science. The writer himself of this story is the writer of one of my favorite manga, I Shield 21, and it's drawn by Boichi, who does Sunken Rock.
And guys, he is such a fucking good artist. It's kind of insane.
If there's anything I could say about the anime is that it's a very generic anime for how good quality Boichi's art is. So as is customary with me, if you enjoy manga and you want to get into this, I would say go manga. But it's a fine anime. You can't go wrong with it.
Yeah.
As the resident anime boy, I'm gonna go ahead and say I like the manga a lot more than the anime.
Whoa! Plot
Wow.
twists.
I agree with Tyler. Tyler's a big anime boy. I tried watching the anime like several times, but it compared to the manga, I just feels like it goes so slow.
Well, it's and again, like, there's nothing spectacular
Bad.
about it. It's a good adaptation.
It's
But like Boichi's art is like god tier.
it is
Yeah.
true.
If we want to get another point of data here for how good the anime is as an adaptation, recently during the holidays I went home, and one of my best friends from high school, I was eating lunch with him, and he's a person who's never ever been really big into any kind of Japanese media. He's not a big anime fan. He had never read a manga before, but he mentioned to me that he heard about Dr. Stone, and he's like, it seemed very up my alley, which I would have thought the exact same thing. This is a guy who had never watched an anime unless, like, I sat down and was like, hey, let's watch this together.
And then y'all would watch Lucky Star together and shit.
No,
Yeah,
we
you
would watch
would.
like, Death Note and shit. But he said he binged Dr. Stone, the anime, really hard, and then immediately he was like, I need more, and then he binged the manga, and he got all the way caught up with it. So he's ahead of me, even. So, I don't know, maybe this... I know for a long time people said, like, Cowboy Bebop is anime for people who don't like anime. It's a good introductory one. I think Dr. Stone could potentially be that, because he's someone who's very not into anime.
I think Dr. Stone has joined Death Note, My Hero, and Fullmetal Alchemist as fantastic starting point anime.
Yeah, hold on. We
This is
don't know
hard.
how to end. This could end with them have to go back in time and freezing themselves with the stone power for some goddamn reason.
Oh no.
I mean, sure, but it's still a good starting. You're gonna have a good time for a long time in a standard starting way. You know?
Yeah. Based off of the arc, like the arc that's going on right now, I think it's still going on. It's pretty great.
I've been enjoying it. I'm not. We're all at different levels. So if the anime ends at the tournament, Bradley has finished up to the Stone War arc, which is the Tsukasa arc.
Yeah, I got to where I don't know. I guess it's the spoiler territory now for the manga.
No, I have reached the climax of the Platinum arc.
Ooh.
Joe, I don't know where you're at, and then Tyler's caught up.
I think I'm 4 chapters behind for being caught up.
I just checked the anime, and where it ends is so criminal.
Oh.
It is so criminally bad because it ends right in the very middle of a very important arc in the manga.
Damn.
And they're 1-to-1, so like the anime is true to the manga. It's not like Boruto or Naruto or something.
Yeah.
So it ends at probably like a very climactic point
What
in
point?
the manga. It's in the arc where they're building a cell phone.
Oh.
And it ends right in the middle of it, right before they finish building the cell phone.
That's the
Oh,
middle
that's
of
a
the
truck right
second
there.
half of Stone Wars.
Yeah.
Yes, it's right in the middle of it, and I'm just like, oh, go read the manga.
That's a yikes. That's all right. Let's talk about some general stuff like the characters and the structure of the story. So Dr. Stone starts off really weird,
It does.
where it confuses a lot of readers into thinking Taiju is the main character, and
Which is
Taiju is just
okay.
generic as fuck.
No, you're very wrong.
I mean, I like Taiju, but you gotta admit he's generic, right?
I feel like the
No.
top point is that like you have such a generic character that you need to introduce into this world, the stone world.
Okay,
This
fine.
Stone
Taiju-
World.
Yeah.
He's Mario though. He's
Yeah.
he's a great character.
You have to use him as a way for audiences to connect, because if you start off with Senku being the god scientist and you start off with him, you're just like, oh, what the hell is happening?
Which is interesting when, like, 10 chapters in, The Taiju is written off the story for like a good chunk of the story at that point.
I think what Joe was saying is kind of on the mark, where
Yeah.
because we start with such an average or even maybe below average intelligence guy, it kind of elevates his partner Senku quite a bit, where we really look up to him like, oh my god, he's so smart, he knows everything. So then whenever we move to focusing on Senku more, it's like, oh fuck yeah, we get to be Senku now.
Right,
Yeah.
so Senku quickly becomes the main character. I mean, to me, he always
God.
was, but I
Yeah.
feel like it confused a lot of people.
No, I agree.
He's the titular Dr. Stone, but it's also Soap. So it's kind of weird.
What I so speaking of Senku, what I love about him is that he's not like, I feel like these super smart characters fall into these tropes all the time, where they think they're better than anyone else, and they think that they're the ones that are going to solve everything. One of the big character traits I love about Senku, like right off the bat, is just like, I cannot do anything without everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, I literally need other people to help me do anything. So that's a big reoccurring theme in Dr. Stone.
If we want to get into it, I think that's the best writing
Yeah.
portion of Dr. Stone is how well it handles teamwork.
Yeah, like that's what my friend was saying. Is he said that's one reason he really connected with Dr. Stone, is because a lot of other, shows, books, games, whatever, whenever you have the character who is they are the smartest one, a lot of times that trope of character can be very nihilistic, or they have a big ego, like everyone else is dumb, or like everything is meaningless. But Senku, because he's as smart as he is, he loves humanity and what humanity has accomplished, and he's very not nihilistic. He's in fact, I want to save all of humanity because of these amazing things that we have done together.
He's unflinching in his optimism. Even if
Yeah.
he'll act like he's too cool and cold, all his actions speak to someone who will wage a war without ever allowing himself or any of his troops to die or kill another person. Like, that's just the kind of person that he is.
Mm-hmm.
The show is very optimistic to a fault, to the point where I think it's also its main weakness.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, you're like, okay, there's almost no tension in terms of like, it kind of reminds me of One Piece for a little bit, where I would talk to Willer, and it's just like, I'm waiting for the part where like Luffy breaks, I think, when I was in the middle of reading it, where it's just like, there's no, like, right now there's no sense of like, Senku feels headstrong in what he's going to do. You know he's going to succeed. It's like, okay, he has his optimism, but there's no struggle almost with him and having this idea.
So one of the main, I have two problems with Dr. Stone that keep it from being a 5 out of 5 for me. One of them is the fact that Senku never struggles.
Yes, that's the big thing.
He's so out of this world genius that there's never been a time where Senku didn't know how to do a thing. He knows how to do everything. I would like it for there to be an arc where Senku is not sure how to do something because he didn't study it in his fucking 16 years of life.
Yeah.
And then he has to figure it out through the scientific process instead of just being like, yeah, I know how to make this complicated pump for this niche mechanism. It's like,
yeah,
come on.
Like, if there was one thing I was going to change about Dr. Stone, it's that it's a lot of what you just said, where the story paints itself as a celebration of science, and to a degree it is that.
It is.
But science is a lot more than the end result. It's a lot more than the stuff we already know.
Yeah.
Science is the study of the natural world. It's a process. And one thing I really liked was at the beginning, when he was having to experiment with different amounts and concentrations of these chemicals to find out what would cure everybody. And I would like to see a lot more processes and him trying to figure out stuff he doesn't already know.
That's been like the one thing he's discovered the whole series, really.
Yeah.
Everything else is stuff that he knows how to do, and then it's very fulfilling to watch him and his kingdom of science like build components that will then be reused without having to be explained in later mechanisms. So it's like, oh, we've built all these things that go into building, say, a car. And then it's just like, well, we don't have to explain how this and this happened because we've explained in the past. Just assume that they optimized the process and it no longer takes them a week.
Yeah.
and they can do it faster now.
The first time is always the hardest part.
Yeah.
Which is okay because it doesn't kill the pacing for it. But like, I always thought the way that the series ends, or the way that like a series does a time skip, is that Cinco is like, I can't figure this out, and then so I have to like give it the information to the people that will show up later, and that's what it's gonna be. And then turns out they kind of already did that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the other characters because I think they're equally important.
Oh boy, are they great!
Chrome.
When Kohaku, Chrome, Ginro, and what's the other one? The other guard? There's Ginro and
Is it Jinro?
Is it Silver?
No,
there's
his spear is
there's the
silver.
blonde one and the dark hair glasses one.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Doctor Glasses one's cool. I promise.
I think that is our core group of, and Suika, sweet
So-
Suika,
It's Ginro and Kinro.
Kinro.
Okay.
We have Tsukasa, Taiju, Ogawa, Kohaku,
Kaseki.
ooh. We're not gonna go into that. Never mind. I forgot. This is a PG-13 podcast.
Speaking of PG-13, Kohaku though, am I right, ladies?
Okay, so there's one other thing about Dr. Stone that I really like, and you really don't realize it unless you read and you pay attention to what they're saying, but
These chicks are hot.
no, but yes. Time and Dr. Stone, like, is kind of the feasible amount of time it takes them. For, like, at the beginning, it takes them, like, what is it, a year and a half, 2 years for them to get the right amount to, like, awaken someone else up. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And, like,
There's this event after where Bradley has read where so much time passes in a single chapter that it was staggering, and I
Yeah.
really like that actually. It moves at such a neck-breaking speed that you start to enjoy that fast pace of it.
and also, now everyone's post-time skip officer, so it's all good.
I
Also, we're not
enjoy-
related, officer, because I was adopted. I hate that plot point so much.
I was just gonna say, like, I enjoy Dr. Stone. I like that Senku is super smart and everything goes his way, just because it's a fun character. All of
Yeah.
the Stonebone crew are all crazy.
Stonebone.
characters. They're all crazy characters. They're all really extreme in their own way. They're all, I think, 18 at this point, honestly, after the 3 time skips that they've had.
Oh, Tyler, your badass coat you made for the Ren Fair was based on the winter outfits in Dr. Stone. right?
Yes, I did make a Renfest costume
Dude, that's
based
like
off
a
of their winter
professional
outfits.
ass looking costume.
It was so specific too, because it's like I need a house robe that only goes down to my elbows. But then I ended up looking like a water tribe person.
What a trap.
Water tribe.
Um,
But
some other characters I'd like to talk about is Chrome and Gin. I think they're the two best characters maybe in the show.
Kaseki, the old man.
Okay, all right, we can talk about him, sure. But Chrome was the game changer of Dr. Stone that made me truly love this series.
Mhm.
He's like a taiju, but like a science apprentice forager taiju instead of this pure stamina brute. Where these moments where Chrome is learning about science and learning how to think like a scientist, he's the first scientist of the post-apocalypse that was there naturally. And I think that's really interesting, and the arcs they make him go through, especially... Okay, we'll save that for the spoiler section, but he has a really cool moment after, I think, where the anime ends. As well as a lot of great moments before then. Dr. Stone's really good at having these impactful moments, like the first light bulb and making the glasses. The way they're drawn just makes them seem so impactful, and there's another really good one that comes to mind, but that's after where Bradley's at as well.
Yeah, those moments are very much like a celebration of like where humankind has come to.
Yeah.
Like, no one, I don't think anyone like in day-to-day society, you would never think about like how someone could like live their whole life without their glasses and not know what glasses are, and then to be introduced to the concept of glasses and can literally understand of like, oh, I've literally been seeing a lesser version of the world my entire life.
That panel of the sunflowers fucked me up. That was like the first time I got glasses in the 8th grade. I was like,
Yeah.
oh
The
my,
anime did a really great adaptation of it. It was a great moment.
good to hear. And then Gen. So Gen's a really fun character because
Again.
he gets to just do a lot of mind games, which is important for the war. But I think my favorite part about Gen is his motivation. The thing that makes him join Senku's team is the fact that they're gonna have soda.
Yeah, I remember that.
That motivation's so good because that soda represents the comfort and the progress that the Science Kingdom will make as opposed to Tsukasa's kingdom. And when he joins the crew, he brings in a lot of fun. Definitely one of my faves.
He's got some of the best facial reactions in the manga.
God.
Yeah.
Oh god, they're great.
Y'all name some of y'all's faves. Go. Get some
Okay.
characters in there.
I definitely enjoy Kasaki a lot because anytime, like, he's always like, I'm not sure about that, and then he's like, oh, but you get to do this, and then he's like, and his shirt rips off.
One of my favorite characters doesn't show up much later until after Bradley, but he's the Admiral.
Oh yes.
Oh,
He's
interesting.
fantastic.
I don't like him that much.
Oh man, I think he's great because he's kind of like what Senku, what you would expect Senku to be, like so cocky and so self-sure about himself, but he has these moments where he
He's a good
Yeah.
leader.
can't do everything, and so he's like, well, I need people's help, but he can't. But he's too proud to lower himself down to a level to ask for help, and then I just think he's a great kind of like foil to Senku's personality of like just being like he wants to do everything by himself and be the one person that can do everything and be like the best that they can be. Where Senku is just like, no, I need all the people that can do everything together, working together all the time.
With that spoiler out of the way, I think we can officially enter our spoiler section here.
Tyler.
And let's talk about Tsukasa. I think that he's my second weakness of Dr. Stone.
Which one's
and
Tsukasa? Is that
Tsukasa's the main villain of
He's the
first
strongest primate high schooler.
Oh yeah.
You know.
I like his motivation somewhat, but also it's kind of I don't know. There's so many gaps and holes.
It gets to a bit too much of like this twirly mustache villain kind of thing. Like I get it, but at the same time, like it doesn't feel very. I don't know. It's just so simplistic that it's hard to like kind of. But at the same time, that's kind of what's great about it against Senku, because
Yeah.
Senku's deal is I have to go the long way to creating civilization again, whereas he's like, no, just start over.
I wish it wasn't as black and white as kids and no adults, because he recruits Ukio, the sonar specialist who worked for the military. You're gonna tell me he's a kid?
Yeah.
What the fuck happened there? It is never explained, and I have no idea how old Ukio is. He's probably a 17-year-old radar god, which is not a fun story beat to have.
He's also a spectacular sniper.
Yeah, Ukio's cool. I like him.
What about the? Do they make him the police officer? It's the guy with the eye patch. Is that him?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, that's the police officer.
Yeah,
But I
I'm
wasn't talking about the police officer.
Yeah, I know.
Yo.
But I was just mentioning in characters that I also like and also kind of hate. That's one of my characters.
Magma is fun.
That name.
I'll have to say, and this character gets it a lot. So like, I think they even they have a spin-off manga for him. Is
Byakuya?
yeah, he has a lot of backstory for his character. And they forge a nice relationship in both the manga and the anime between Byakuya and
That chapter,
our main boy.
that chapter with old Byakuya and the platinum was so good.
Oh
Do y'all
yeah,
remember that one?
when he's yeah
Yeah, it's close to where I stopped reading.
yeah I
And
do.
that one got me emotional. Like what a good dad. But then there's also the point where he sold like his car to get Senku his equipment. That's another one of those pages.
I think that's another thing that I really like with the show is that there's no tragic backstory to a lot or any of these characters.
Yeah. Well,
They are all because there's no point. There's no
Tsukasa
point.
has one.
Yeah, there's no point in having a tragic backstory when everyone has to start over again, kind of deal, because everyone starts at zero.
Yeah.
I mean, they're reviving people from the dead to start a new, like, civilization. Would you be reviving anybody with a tragic backstory?
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, I feel like those can sometimes be used as a character motivation or as a character defining trait of that. Oh, I grew up alone because all my parents were dead, and Dr. Stone doesn't really do that.
Eh.
It makes people that like feel like people sometimes, where it's just like this person's just really good at what they do. They grew up normally, but they're just really good at this one thing.
And nobody
that's
got
what I
time
really
for that.
appreciate is that Senku didn't like have a shit father that's like, you shouldn't be doing science. You
Yeah,
should be in the
yeah.
theater.
It's cool that he had a. It's cool that he had a supportive father.
Yes.
About the revival thing, I thought it was such a cool setup that Tsukasa was crushing people, but then you get that reveal that Yuhiriza, I can never say her name.
Taiju's girlfriend.
Taiju's girlfriend was hoarding, which, by the way, the fact that they're not together now is weird.
Really? What?
Well, the fact that he's like, never mind, I won't tell you yet. I'll tell you when blank. I hate that trope, but
I do hate that.
let's just have a romance, for God's sake. They need to populate the fucking earth. I dislike the reveal that she was hoarding all the pieces so she could glue them back together. I feel like no one died in Dr. Stone yet.
Yeah.
Oh, lots of people died.
Are you positive? Because it feels like the kind of thing where they will not address anyone, and they're gonna hand wave it all with Yurihiza was able to collect all the pieces, and she.
That's probably what happened. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Like there was a point where I was like, yeah, in this.
In the stone
this
world.
this big pile of rubble that used to be like 50 people, you can tell which tiny shard went to which person and put them all back together.
Well, specifically, the reveal was that like whenever Tsukasa broke people throughout her time as a spy, she would take all the pieces and like hide them in a cave or something, right?
Yeah.
Actually, yes, people have died. So, like the space station crew.
Yeah.
That was a tragic backstory.
Backstory people
Is their
don't
survival.
count. That's just One Piece. No one dies in One Piece.
But
Don't count. We know this.
also nobody's died on screen yet. You right. Except, well, no, that's false.
Maybe some people died when they were attacking, like in the cars, and like there was explosions.
Tsukasa's dead.
No, that's the thing. Tsukasa gets revived, or at least
No, he
like,
doesn't. No.
Well, the whole goal of the current arc is to be able to petrify him so that they can revive him.
True, but he boy dead.
He's
Even
not.
then, the people on the airplanes that blew up and their shards got sent to the ends of the earth, Yuzuriha is just gonna find those and glue them all back together.
She's gonna put Trump back together.
Donald Trump's gonna get put back together.
Yes, he will. In this stone world.
And that was the biggest disappointment in the anime. There was no anime Donald Trump in the first episode.
But it bothered me, right, that, and then at the end Tsukasa gets redeemed because they introduce Hyogoro as like the second-hand man who was eviler than him.
Yeah,
And we get to,
that's a reoccurring thing about Dr. Stone is that has the DBZ effect where like the previous villain becomes your ally now. And I kind of understand the point. The whole theme of the series is that humanity has to put aside its differences, work together to get, and that's how we progress.
Yeah.
But like it's so kind of frustrating because you kind of just be like, all right, well, this person's gonna be here forever now. Like there's no this person being evil. I guess they're not evil, but being like this antagonistic force really doesn't mean anything.
at the end of the day, what people's complaints with Steven Universe is, I end up being for Dr. Stone, where it's like, I wish it was just a little bit darker. I'd still give it a 4 out of 5. There's so many good moments and characters.
About Tsukasa's redemption, I wasn't upset that he got redeemed. I just didn't. I wasn't huge on the execution of the redemption.
Yeah.
I wonder if he died to protect Senku.
That did happen, right? He gets in the way of the spear.
He protects Senku, and then like,
Big
but
eye rolls.
he's also not dead. He's just Disneyed into a vault.
In the arc after, though, I like a lot of the teamwork moments in that arc.
the arc after has been very good. I think they're doing a great job in like progressing and so on and so forth. And the situation that's going on right now is just
which is
very
cool.
action-packed, and it's really cool, and it progresses this lore. There's a great shot of a MacGuffin later that's really cool.
Is it the capsule?
No, it's another MacGuffin.
Okay, past me.
Right.
Ryusei is introduced at this point. His introduction was so sudden.
Which was Ryusei? Is that the ad?
Ryusei is the admiral.
Yeah, I love him, but yeah.
It was so sudden, and then like he has his gimmick of snapping, which is neat. But yeah, he was introduced kind of rushed. But then like the stuff with the Bradley, slight spoilers.
I'll cover my ears.
The stuff with the flying devices had some of the most beautiful pages in the series. Like when they make the blimp, and then there's stuff with that. It's freaking great.
It's not a blimp. A blimp doesn't have a basket. It has a carriage.
Man. Anyways, I like the girl of this arc I'm in.
Yeah.
Kohaku's infiltration mission's dope. That underwater mission was really intense. I like that.
Was really intense. That was a cool moment where like they're like, oh, we just got screwed at this. Yeah, we're like,
you were talking about lack of tension. I would say like that arc was able to build the tension well.
Yeah.
Even knowing that like that none of this is probably going to be final, the difficulty that they have to go through to get out of the situation is tense.
The big thing is that it's less about like there's less of a risk. I think that's also the point too, is that the author wants to introduce a way that he can eliminate characters, but not necessarily kill them off quite hastily, but just find another way to like to minimize the amount of tools, quote unquote, that Senku has to like get around the situation.
Yeah, that was a good way to do that.
So it like, yeah, when you're missing half the people that can get your stuff done. I think even himself got hit. Am I wrong about that? No, he was on the island at the time.
Yeah, it was just the boats.
But yeah, it was great tension building. It's just like there never feels a permanency of whatever happens. Or there's
Ginro on the ship was a good moment for that character too. It was like him and Suika having to do that mission on the boat.
Yeah.
That was fun. That's as far as I've gotten. It's at the climax where there's combat happening. They found the MacGuffin they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm into it. I'll definitely have more to say when I do eventually catch up. Which I guess if y'all want to talk about anything after that, spoilerful, like.
If you haven't been reading Dr. Stone, I highly recommend reading Dr. Stone. If just for the art alone. I think the art's pretty great. My only other big thing about Dr. Stone is that I feel like one or two things can be one chapter a little bit too slow, but that's about it. Like, I feel like sometimes it gets a little bit laggy in some aspects, but other times it's really fast paced.
For me, I think Dr. Stone's great. A really good 4 out of 5. I think everyone can enjoy this. For me, I'm the opposite. I wish some things were a chapter too fast. And despite the 2 major complaints I brought up with it, they're really not enough to take away from the fun.
No.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the everyone can enjoy this camp that Willer is in. I would say there's a lot of manga out there where I can be like, oh, this person I know would really, really like it. This other type of person probably would hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Stone is something I think anyone can at least give a try, and they'll probably get some kind of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah.
Tyler, why don't you close us off with your final thoughts on Dr. Stone?
Opinions, braveries.
As an isekai fan myself, Dr. Stone is a great isekai.
No! You're so right, though.
Technically correct.
Yeah. Dr. Stone, like, I didn't realize at first, but it's like a 70% isekai, and it lured me in without me realizing.
The day has been rude where I got Willer to watch isekai.
Yeah. There you go. Dr. Stone, everybody. It's great. 10 billion% recommended. All right, to close out the podcast, Joe has something for us, some
All right.
discussion topic.
So you get this is all right. It's a hypothetical, but it involves money.
Okay.
So you get $1 million. It's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
However, every time you stop walking or making any sort of forward progression, your shoelaces become untied.
Oh, that's
Oh,
fine.
fuck that. I'll just wear boots.
Yeah, first of all, Bradley wears boots or sandals.
Okay, here's the next part of that thing. If you
I thought you were
wear
going to say every time you stop making forward momentum, you start losing money.
Oh, that would fucking suck.
You'd have to be a shark.
if you wear shoes or footwear that can't be tied, those footwear just fly off your feet.
That sucks.
Yeah, whatever, man. I can learn to walk with shoelaces untied.
Let's go barefoot.
I get those like Velcro sandals. Is that an option?
No, that counts as non-tying shoes, so they'll fly off your feet.
Dude, no, I would weaponize it. I would like put laceless steel blocks on my foot, and then I would go up to my enemy and I would stop walking, and it flies off my foot and hits him in the face.
You're strong enough to walk up to your enemy with steel shoes?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, dude.
I have the strongest toes on the playground.
Why not just put a knife on it?
Fun fact: high top shoes, you don't have to really tie them too much.
Yeah.
You can like really get those laces in there,
Trying to
and then
get-
they're covered up. Ooh,
Yeah, what if I'll just tuck the laces in the sides or like on the top and
pro fashion move right there.
yeah.
I'll just levitate.
That's
Weak
fair.
Joe, we're all millionaires now.
Congrats, you're all millionaires. All right, see you next week where I ask you a question about food.
Bye. So let's talk about 26 second half. This is the first time in a long time that I felt like splitting an arc in half, just because this might go a while. We'll see how this turns out, but
Like, even one of the following chapters could probably be talked about more than entire arcs.
and I think it's super reasonable because I think these are the 3 chapters where I was like, oh wait, Worm is like one of the best things ever. Oh, I get it now.
Like, these next 3 chapters are just like a masterclass.
So let's get to the beginning of it, which is the Theo interlude, part A. I got here and I was like, Bradley, this is like the first character that's had 2 interludes. And I mean, I guess maybe Pago, but maybe you could argue that one in 16 was more of a squad thing.
Yeah.
Until the end, where it was clearly focusing on her. But like, I just thought that was weird because it's like, oh man, a character is important enough to get 2 interludes, and then they got 3. So it's like, oh man,
Like, bolt.
my boy, and you know I love Theo, so I was super down for this.
Main character confirmed.
What all can I even say about this? Hold on. It's a lot of these chapters is Theo and Dinah working together, which was a super unexpected group to be working together, to narrow down the best way that they could corner Jack and get that one-on-one fight that's supposed to save the world.
Yeah.
This is the storyline that's been brewing since arc 11. Yeah, 11B, one of my favorite chapters, right? And it's super interesting because in an earlier portion of this arc, Theo talks about how Jack wants me to be his rival, but Taylor, you're truly his rival because you both have this innate urge to plan and scheme and execute and just do the hero thing.
It's like Taylor is driven by conflict just like Jack, but in a different way. Jack has to be doing something. He cannot sit still, but his is like driven by violence and hers is by
Guilt, I would say. It's how she avoids guilt. She doesn't stop moving.
yeah.
And I think Jack doesn't realize this, and Taylor doesn't realize this, but I think Theo does.
Yeah.
And I was worried that, like, oh man, we're not going to get that cool showdown between Theo and Jack. But we super do. And it's fantastic. But before we get there, I really like Theo and Dinah working together, where Theo has like 20 questions to work with before Dinah's power shuts down. And it's such a good narrative device to ramp up the tension even more, as if the stakes weren't high enough. He
Because
has.
it's like ticking down on a clock because it's like when we run out of questions.
We're blind.
Yeah.
And I mean, it basically feels like a game over at that point. So they're progressing on the nine. They're all attacking. Jack is fleeing. He's very good at fleeing. And Theo kind of breaks off on his own. And with Dinah's help, he's trying to juggle saving as many people as he can and chasing down Jack. And it becomes a game of, do I attack or do I not attack? And as he runs into scenarios, him and Dinah have to work through the best chance. So there's scenarios where he has to run from a fight or scenarios where he should attack and help out. And whatever's happening, it's narrowing down the chances that they can beat Jack.
Yeah.
And like I said, just fantastic story device. It's the kind of thing where it's like, so much action is happening that I can't wait to reread this chapter as well.
And even then, when he gets to Jack, Jack is holding a fucking claymore.
It's so cool, man.
And he's riding on a hook wolf, who, by the way, he can use his power on.
That was wild. I was not. So was Hook Wolf wasn't there from the start, was he? Because Jack and Theo have a little bit of a scuffle before Hook Wolf shows up, or was he always there?
I think he's probably running around.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure. You know how Hook Wolf be.
You know how he is.
Man, remember when I defended Hook Wolf and then my defense went nowhere?
He's a good guy.
You hate to see it. But I really like how Jack comes out. It's a great reintroduction of like endgame Jack, where his shirt is open, not a fat on his body. He's carrying a giant claymore. He's played by James Franco.
Yes.
And he's just taunting Theo, and he's riling him up. And Theo starts talking that shit, man.
Dude, like, I love this so much, and I was talking to you about it, where I love this moment so much because of Jack's reaction to what Theo says. This is like the one time in the story that Jack loses the smirk on his face. Jack has been in like way tenser situations. Even like back when he first met Theo, Theo's like, she can fly and level skyscrapers. Do you really think you're going to get away? And he's like, well, I don't know I'm going to get away. I might die, but it's more fun that way. And he laughs it off. Even under threat of death, Jack is always just having a good time because this is all a game to him. But Theo tells him to shut up. And he says, you're not that clever. You're not as sharp as you like to think. You talk to me about keystones. Bullshit. You're a sad, pathetic killer with delusions of grandeur. And it says Jack's smile dropped from his face.
And then the fight begins off of that.
That, like, this whole scene where Jack shows up and he and Theo talk is one that I picture in my head, like, as film more than like even more actiony moments.
Definitely.
Because I feel like you can just do such cool stuff with like the lighting and where they are in relation to each other.
And I just imagine a good actor Theo spitting those lines and James Franco's frown.
It's so good.
It's I was saying that like I feel like Wildbow, as a little side note, I saw some comments recently saying, man, watch The Boys. The Boys is brilliant. And I'm like, The Boys kind of sucks, IMO, but all right. And I just feel like Wildbow is missing this chance to strike when the world kind of wants a deconstruction of the superhero genre because it's so big. So, like, the quicker he can hire me to screenwrite his show, I'm just saying he can get in there before it's too late. Just call me, man. You have my email.
The past decade or so, we have been in, like, I guess maybe a second golden age of superhero media, if you want to call it that.
As of Avengers, really.
If Worm TV show and or movie came out right now, holy shit, it would take it by storm.
There's actual content and depth, and all the little nitpicks and problems I have with Worm don't take away that the grand picture here is what the world is looking for right now, and it would blow minds.
Yeah,
It would-
so I'm always terrified that if it ever does get adapted to the screen, it's not going to be until after the ship has sailed.
and like, what if it gets canceled like at season 2 or something, and they don't get all the way through? Oh, Wildbow, please, the world really needs this because of scenes like this. This would be fantastic. And they're fighting like these warped like buildings that like Nyx is like doing illusions to and stuff like that. It would look so cool. So the fight starts. It's a cool little action scene, and like the real big takeaway is that Theo's doing some cool moves. He's really going for it, but Jack is managing to balance offense and defense really well, and I think that's like just indicative of Jack. And the fight ends with a very surprising Grey Boy defeating Scion. At least I thought he was defeating him at the time, you know. But like,
yeah,
like,
they see Scion get looped by Grey Boy, and they are just like, oh fuck.
It's super dire. And we move on to the second interlude, which was Theo again. I was so happy to see
Yeah,
this.
you were like, what?
What the fuck? A double! And this would be the third Theo interlude, and like, yeah, he's maybe top 5. Theo's great. I just wish that in the earlier chapters, Theo's voice wasn't so dumb when it was getting read, but that's okay. Man, it was a bad Theo voice. So, this has a bit of a flashback of Theo training with Taylor. This was a really good scene, and a really sad scene, where Theo's thinking about his training with Taylor. He could never really beat her when he was training with her, and he would like, okay, go all out, and she would just destroy him and not have any mercy. And he saw it as like, oh, well, it's because she knows I can get back up and I can keep fighting. And we see that. But it's really what?
But that's how he views it, but
true.
Yeah.
Taylor, with how cold she is, I don't think that's what she actually thinks. I'd like to believe it is. I mean, she has somewhat of a soft spot for Theo.
Yeah.
I did also skip the point where he's like, I looked at Taylor and I wasn't sure what to think, like what was going on through her head. Did she kill Aster out of mercy, or did someone else's bullet hit Aster? He's not even sure how his sister died. But that's part of why he's so mad at Jack. His whole family is dead now.
And talking about how he reacts to Aster, because in the chapter where it actually happens, he comes up to Taylor and he begins to ask her about it, and then he changes his mind and leaves, and we kind of find out why. I can't remember if it was in the first or second Theo interlude.
It was in the first one. I forgot to mention it.
Yeah, he says that he wants to ask her about it, but he's terrified of what the answer would be.
Yeah.
Because if she were to tell him something along the lines of, it's the cost of doing business, he just doesn't know if he'd be able to take it, because I don't think he views the same way she views things. That
not at all.
It like, I don't think he has that it's okay because I had to do it. To her, like to Theo, that is a baby, that is an innocent, and he's probably been around people in his time as a hero who have had that philosophy that sometimes you just got to do the bad things, but that's not Theo. And if he heard that from someone who killed his sister, I think that would just break him, and he needs to not be broken right now.
I kind of regret skipping this, but there was a lot of rich stuff in that scene right after the death, where he's like, if someone walks up to me and says something sappy, am I going to be able to hold it in? It's not masculine to show tears and stuff like that and show emotions, so I'd rather just be alone and quiet. And he's like, wait, what if no one shows up to me? What if they all think that this is cost of doing business? And like, there's just a lot of those thoughts.
Yeah, it's like maybe people aren't saying anything to me because they don't want to hurt my feelings, but the other scenario, like, what if they're not saying anything to me because they don't think that's a problem?
Yeah, it's
just crazy.
Fantastic. And I'm glad that this comes up now, and that's actually a good time to come up, because we're getting to these flashbacks with Taylor, right? And we get to see how he had a crush on her. And it's just really sad because Theo was never like very confident in himself, and now he has this girl that's helping him out, and he's choosing to see the positives of her kicking his ass, like we were just saying. I think that reinforces the fact that I don't think Taylor really thought that. It's his idealized view of her. But as they're training, he keeps lamenting how like this bond just means that when it's time for business, Skitter or Taylor is going to leave and Weaver is going to take over, and they're going to drift apart.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because it's all this bond, and he knows what Taylor is working towards and what kind of person she's willing to become when it's time for the end of the world. And it's exactly what happened in the chapter where she kills Aster. It's all business. So it's interesting where this happens, because when we get back, Theo is just obliterated by Jack and Hookwolf's dual attack, which is sick as shit. But he survives. People catch up to him. He gets patched up, and then you get this really intense like final chase with Jack, where he's truly cornered at this point. But he has a Siberian. He has a Gray Boy. There's a couple of other jobbers around. And I got a little confused here. So Theo has like 2 questions left. He discerns like the way to win basically is that a DT soldier would shoot containment foam. Shout outs to containment foam.
Shout out. And then Tecton would use gravity against Siberian by destroying the ground and making her fall. That was established to be one of the Siberian's weaknesses. She would let go of Jack, and then Tecton would kill him. What I don't get, it plays out just like this. Theo's helping the DT soldier get up with his arms. Foil pretends to be caught in the time loop, which confused me a little bit, but is a cool strategy employed by her. What I don't get is why Gray Boy loops Jack. Yeah. So let's see here, and I actually have the text up because Gray Boy says words when he's doing it.
Yeah, he's like, "If anyone's gonna take you out, it's me," kind of sentiment.
Let's see. Because from what I remember, it's supposed to be that he loses some respect. Okay, here we go. I can read the text right here where Jack had turned gray, trapped, looped, and pathetic, Gray Boy said, "Stupid, useless. I thought you'd do something interesting, but you've made yourself the prey instead of the predator. If you're going to be the prey, I want you to be my prey." I think in this scenario, like we said, Jack has been on the run now, and he's almost cornered. And I think he's now in a position where he lost some whatever respect Gray Boy had for him by being the prey instead of the predator. Which, holy shit, I think Gray Boy just said if it came out of Sophia's mouth.
I was just gonna say, Gray Boy's just Sophia.
There you go.
So I think the catalyst then for him actually is the moment the ground gets shattered. I think that's when Gray Boy's like, well, that's where we lost.
He's like, fuck that.
And then that's when he loops Jack. So Jack is getting hit by the Tecton pile driver over and over now, right?
Yeah.
They trap Jack so he can just suffer in his box. Siberian and Gray Boy are killed by Foil. And yeah, all is well. They won.
And here's where we get the final little beat of that narrative device we were talking about, with Dinah's questions being like a countdown. Because at the very end here, when they trap Jack and it looks like they've won, Golem is like, "Dinah, I need one more question. Just like tell me everything is going to be okay." But she doesn't respond.
Man. So did she have a question left? Is that like, did she run out of power, or did she see the truth?
I think she just didn't have it in her anymore.
God damn.
And then everyone's just kind of like, yeah, I guess we're good. We did it. And then
Tecton's like, Jack was saying some weird shit when I was attacking him.
Shit over there.
And then he whispers it to Theo, and we don't get to know what it is for now.
Ooh. And then we enter one of the most astounding things I've ever read.
Let me preface this. I thought this chapter was unnecessary, but it's so brilliant and such a way to identify Wildbow's writing and what makes Worm special that maybe I was wrong. And when I was saying it was unneeded or perhaps extra, it's because the way I view power systems is like the more I don't like sci-fi very much at all, really. I feel like you get too bogged down in the how, and then it just kind of kills the pacing of the story, and there's no real mystery. It falls too neatly, and I prefer, like, one of my favorite power systems is Nen from Hunter x Hunter, where it's just like spirit karate with well-defined rules. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Or Stands, where it's like they break the rules all the time, but they're really fun in JoJo's. So I'm like, I could do without like this super in-depth explanation of powers, but this is so much more than that, and it's such a good explanation to boot, where it's like, no, this is just brilliant. This is just like the best thing I've ever read, kind of thing.
Because like, there's so much to it that there's so many things that I love here that we kind of learn why the kind of people who get powers do get powers. We kind of learn like why it seems that powers all have uses in combat. We learn why most powers are at a kind of power level where people can actually fight each other and not like get killed too easily. And we learn even so much more than that.
I think another part that makes this fascinating is Wildbow has set up all these mysteries throughout the story, and this one chapter plugs so many of them in. And I love a good weaving of plot threads together. And this is like the ultimate, like, release those good chemicals into my brain.
Ooh.
This fits into so many places, and it's so fascinating. And it's a genuinely really fantastic power system. Like, when you're gonna go sci-fi, you gotta do this. Like, this is so fascinating. And I mean, let's get into it, I guess, to the specifics here.
You had this idea for like the first half of this chapter, which is the entity kind of recounting the earliest parts of its history.
Yeah.
And you were like, it'd be so cool if in the Worm Netflix series, if this was presented kind of like a National Geographic documentary.
The way I picture it, right, because they don't communicate much in this early chapter, you would get like, the National Geographic, where there's a voice, possibly Scion's voice, retelling the story. And by the way, Bill and Ted have names now, kind of. Bill has a name. We'll talk about that later. But so my idea is you get a lot of the dialogue. I guess it's not dialogue. You get a lot of the text in the chapter through a narration in a National Geographic, where it's kind of exploring the biology of the entities, right? And you get like, that's a way that you can explain shards. It's a way that you can kind of explain their overarching system. You can show them eating each other when they're running low on resources and kind of like consuming one another and trying to remain big so you don't get consumed. That whole biology and history that they have. And it would be cool, like, as he's explaining it, there's a very specific way National Geographic does things, where they will have the voiceover and then they would just let the footage linger with like natural sounds. Like, think of like a lion eating its prey. The dude would be like, and the lion clutches its claws into the prey. And then there's like a pause as you like hear the natural sounds of the lion actually attacking the prey. I feel like you could do a lot of that with this, where like you explain a little bit about the entities and then you just kind of let them play out and you get to visually see just the weird ways that they interact together. Anyways, Wildbow, theroundaboutcast at gmail.com. I'll be waiting.
Yeah, and so we kind of learn about their early history, where they kind of detonate their planet and spread throughout the cosmos, and they begin finding life out there and borrowing from the evolved abilities and imaginations of whatever they find out there.
Storing them in shards.
Yeah, they will kind of, because the entities have their own abilities that they are born with. They can, kind of move mass and energy from one place to another. So, a shard of an entity will, maybe join with a plant, and it'll say, "Oh, I'll keep the, I'll keep the plant warm or something so it doesn't wilt." And in return, I can study it and see, like, oh, maybe it learns about photosynthesis for the first time. That memory is encoded into the shard. And it does this kind of all over a planet that it finds. And then when it determines there's no more information to find, it gathers itself back up, and just like it did in the beginning, it detonates the planet and spreads out again. And I love the way Wildbow delivers this line, because it's like a really short sentence where it's like the planet blows up and they're on their way, and you just kind of like instantly make the connection, like, oh fuck.
Earth is fucked. It's so interesting. There's, oh my god, where to begin? I just want to say that as I was listening to this, I could hardly finish it because every couple of sentences I'd have to like theorize something with Bradley. I was just freaking out. It was so fun to go through it. So you get this idea that these entities are like, they're just kind of doing what biologically they're programmed to do, where they had a scarcity of resource and all they did was consume each other before they started doing this shard plan, right? They were just kind of like swimming about in space and eating each other and just kind of fucking surviving until they ran out of resources, right? And they would find ways to consume energy. So it's like they're doing this for the evolution of their race.
Yeah, because this like process where they would war and then they would die out and then they would come back, it had happened so many times.
I think it's 100 something times at the beginning of the chapter.
They had kind of probably exhausted every strategy or like method of governing themselves that could probably even exist. They've done this so many times and been around so long. The evolution of their species is just like
stagnated,
and they need answers that they themselves are not able to conceive of. So they have to go out and borrow from everything else.
I have a question. Do shards have a physical form, or are we talking about strictly metaphysical BS here?
I believe that's the thing, is these are like really strange beings to understand. I view it as shards are a very physical thing, kind of analogous to a cell in a body.
Mm-hmm. And it said that an entity is composed of many shards, yeah?
Yeah.
And I guess like that is its ability set that kind of forms its being.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So the whole idea that they had to do this to evolve, it's like they're not even evil. Like, you can't even look at them and say they're evil because that's just their natural instinct to evolve, and humans do the same thing. We destroy nature and use nature and all of our natural resources to evolve in science and evolve in culture. So it's like, shit, man.
Yeah.
We're fighting a battle against the idea of evolution, against a race that's greater than us. They're classic aliens at the end of the day, just explained way cooler.
Yeah, and like for very early cycles, this was probably a pretty sweet gig for organisms before the whole planet exploding, because
Oh, yeah.
for some organisms it's just like, oh, I get a cool ability that I didn't have before.
I'm a plant that can shoot a laser.
Yeah, and it probably wasn't until later that the entities are specifically like, no, we need to like maximize conflict. These things need to be used as much as possible. And we even see that in earlier cycles, they didn't even really try to hide themselves. They say that there was like an intelligent race that this can assume are maybe somewhat like humans. They at least can think. And the entities would bond with them, and through somehow these hosts found out kind of what the entities were and forcibly removed them. So
yeah.
from then on, the entities are probably like, oh shit, we gotta make sure people don't know what we're doing.
Which brings us finally into Bill and Ted.
Ooh.
Bill and Ted, if you haven't watched all of these podcast episodes, is the name that I gave to the entities as we were getting all those trigger visions, because there was always two. Maybe not always two, but it was very clear that there was this idea of a duo moving through space and time and finding humans to give powers to. And I called one of them Bill and one of them Ted. Let's say Bill's the warrior, and Ted is the... what's the word they use? Not thinker, but...
I think it would be thinker.
Yeah. So these two find a planet with their weird way of communicating that uses up a ton of energy just to communicate. They find the planet of Earth and they begin their experiment. They very quickly find out how to optimally bond to people having trauma. For example, they start doing it with a guy. I think they're gonna first do it to a guy who's about to rape a woman. But then they're like, oh wait, the woman's suffering way more. Let's do her instead. If I was understanding that scene correctly. And they're very quickly optimizing who to bond with.
It's just like, of these hosts, they have to try to understand them, and they can pretty easily see that the ones that are under more stress are going to run into more conflict, which means more use of these granted abilities, which means more things learned.
Yeah. And we had a conversation about how all these things learned are ways that they can benefit their own species. So, like, say, an ability like imps, that's very relevant right now, where imp has the ability to make herself be forgotten. This is the same kind of ability that they use on their host right after the trigger visions. They're like, when people bond with a shard, they get a vision. We aren't really gonna deal with that. We're gonna let that slide. It'll just be easier to put a fragment of this forget shard into all of these other shards.
Yeah. And it's so cool to me on rereads where, like, back in Arc 11, there's a trigger vision and Taylor quickly starts forgetting it, and she's like, man, this is just like Imp's ability. And I'm like, it's not like Imp's ability. It literally is Imp's ability.
Yeah, it's, man, Wildboat, you're right. He always knew. I mean, he had for sure knew at least by Arc 7 where we see that first vision, but I'm sure there's stuff, I mean, Scion's in the first chapter, so first arc, so of course he knew. So something interesting happens as they're setting up in planet Earth, Earth Bet in particular. Yeah. A third entity shows up, and it bonds with the thinker, and then it says it moves on. This is Jeff. We're gonna call him Jeff.
It's canon.
So Jeff's an interesting case because I didn't see too many people talking about him in the comments either. I'll have some theories about him later, but he deeply interests me. Whether or not he actually moved on and didn't also set up on Earth is something I'm very interested to find out. Or he could have corrupted the thinker, which is Ted, possibly. We'll see as we go on. But basically, all is going well. They're putting their shards in people. Whenever a trigger event finally occurs, it'll pop out and it'll unlock their abilities. Something about these shards I find interesting. They talk about all these things they do. One thing they don't talk about, unless I missed it, they don't say shards make you more aggressive. Do they?
Not outright, at least.
Not outright. Because we learned so much about this bonding process, and we learned that they want conflict, but it almost makes it seem like the shards aren't making you more aggressive. human psychology plus having power is making you more aggressive.
Ooh.
At least that, I mean, maybe there's something down the line that like straight up contradicts what I'm saying, but because they don't, because like when they were bonding with plants, were they making aggressive plants? No, it doesn't. It seems like their conclusion was, oh, we need to give more conflict oriented power so that they're used more often so we can learn more. They didn't necessarily say we need to influence subconsciously people to fight. At least, I mean, I need to reread this chapter every week of my life now for the rest of my life, since that's the worm experience. But maybe I'll get some more insight on that. But what do you think of that?
The primary motivation here seems that, for the sake of efficiency, they seek out a someone who is already conflict prone.
That would make sense. They talk about how they get teenagers because that if a teenager grows up with power, maybe that's more time for them to get acclimated with conflict potentially.
Of course, we also know there are cases of people having kind of elements of their mind being shaped by the power, and of course, maybe we don't know if that's just because of the way their life went having that power, or if it's the power actively doing it to them.
That's why I bring it up because there's been so many beats as of the last few arcs where Taylor is trying to reconcile with her passenger. She's saying, "Dang, I don't know if this is me or if this is my passenger, but I hope I can at least come to terms with the fact that I have a passenger controlling my actions."
Like, ones I think of would be Rachel and Noelle.
Possibly, she does like argue with her. I It almost feels like this whole passenger and thing is bullshit in a way, where like maybe the idea here is that I would love to see some comments with like some sources to like prove me wrong here, but I almost get the sense that like Taylor blaming stuff on her passenger is a coping mechanism to where like no, that is truly your subconscious, and your subconscious is prone to fight, and it's not something forcing you to. That's just the person that you became when given all this power, and you're blaming it or trying to somewhat reconcile it as the passenger making you do it. I don't know.
Yeah, you can almost wonder, because it's like, once you learn about the existence of this thing, anytime you do something terrible, that opens up like a new avenue
Coping
of
mechanism.
cognitive dissonance, where it's like, well, I wouldn't normally do that. Maybe it was the passenger.
And doesn't that in turn make you more conflict prone because you have a new coping mechanism to fall back on?
Ooh.
I don't know. There might be something to this, and I'll keep that in mind as I wrap up my worm journey with these last few arcs. But moving on from that theory crafting, because we'll have more theories.
Oh yeah.
Ted dies. Bradley,
Pour one out for my boy.
pour one out for my big monstrous thing. Okay, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. Okay, first of all, Scion is Bill. As Scion is being birthed into the earth, that's also the time where Ted dies, yeah?
Oh yeah.
Coincidence? Possibly not. Ted explodes into a bunch of shards, and this is Scion's. How should I differentiate Scion the Golden Man and Scion the Entity? Is there like a term for that?
I think we could just call Scion, and the entity, or the warrior, maybe.
Yeah, let's call it the. So I think so. The warrior sees the thinker shards explode because they're in a different dimension, just kind of like interfacing with our dimension, which is very interesting. And he's like, "What the actual fuck do I do? We're supposed to work in pairs. The whole idea is that like when we're done together here, we kind of like fuse or exchange information, and then we're able to make it back home or something. Like it's all part of the plan."
Like his particular version of their species, they've like evolved in such a way that they have to work as a pair, and without the other one, an individual does not know how to complete their cycle, and he sits there for years because he's like, it says coming up with alternative things to do is not in his realm of imagination,
Because
because
he's the warrior.
imagination is something he lacks. He doesn't think. He can't imagine other things to do.
Can the thinker imagine? Or is that also outside their realm of
We'll put a
perspective?
pin in that thought.
Okay. Shit, dog. So, alright, here's Willer theorem number 1. All cauldron powers are made from Ted's shards. I feel super confident saying this. The first thing that made me think of it is as soon as they explained how Scion saw all of Ted's shards flying about, the first thing I thought about was, isn't it weird that in every trigger vision there's like 2 consistent visions? One of 2 things traveling and communicating, and then one of them just finds a person, and that's kind of the end of the vision, as I recall. But
Yeah,
then
pretty much.
there's some that have this extra component of a giant creature landing on a planet and dying and spreading its seeds out into the world.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, the first time we see this is with Scrub, which is the second trigger vision we ever see. And we know Scrub is in Cauldron Cape. So that's kind of where that first, I was like, oh, that must be it. And then as the chapter went on and Scion is describing all the Cauldron Capes as dead shards, I'm just like, okay, this is almost confirmed to be it in my mind. So the theory there for me then is that Cauldron found a way to access these dead shards and bind them to people. Possibly, they're not supposed to be able to open portals into the dimensions where the entities went to. But maybe since one of them is dead, they can do it. I'm not sure. Not sure if they're even in the same dimension as like Scion and Ted. But maybe they get like an actual piece of this shard and they distill it into the potions, and by drinking it, it forces the bond or something. That would be my current running theory. What killed Ted? This is something that fascinates me.
Who done it? Now Worm becomes a noir detective story. Scion smokes a corncob pipe and has a Sherlock Holmes hat.
And then he's just like, tonight England dies.
Yeah.
Another mystery solved by the great Scion. So my knee-jerk reaction is to say Jeff killed Ted. Ooh. And Jeff has to be something. There's no way that he just moved on. He bonded with... Fuck, man, there's so many ways. I think there's 2 main paths it can go. Jeff straight up killed Ted, and add on to that, Jeff makes the Endbringers, and that's like his race's way of learning, is by making these unkillable monsters.
Sure, they fit in here somewhere.
They weren't made by Scion, very explicitly.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy to me, because we get to this chapter where it's like, yes, this is the chapter where we learn everything, and it's like, actually we learned like 90% of everything.
There's still some key mysteries, like the Endbringers, right? So either Jeff made them, or Jeff, when he interfaced with Ted, maybe Jeff's race is capable of imagination, or they got some wild theories over there on his side of the camp, and he kind of influences Ted to set this in motion. So like maybe Ted killed itself, and this is all part of the bigger plan. Did Endbringer show up before Scion?
Scion was the first parahuman anything you ever saw.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Ted's in on it, but Jeff's still like the Endbringer guy. Yeah.
Big theories.
I wonder if Jeff would have an avatar, or if the idea is like, I'm just gonna send 3 avatars out into the world, and they're all me, and how I learn is how they deal with humans with powers. That's how I upgrade my shards.
I know if I was making an avatar, I think it'd be pretty badass to be Leviathan instead of a golden.
Golden Man. Um, we get the closure of like how the Golden Man was lost in the world and how Kevin was able to give him a mission, and then he's like, I mean, my mission's already compromised. I might as well do what this guy's saying.
Yeah, because this is the first time that an alternative has presented itself, because he sat there for years not knowing what to do. He can't come up with an alternative. So the first person to give him one, he's like, fuck it, I'm doing
I'll
it.
do it. It's also interesting that I mentioned earlier how I feel like the entity race is very defined by destruction and evolution. And I think Scion kind of forgot this. And there's this particular line where after Scion has felt pain for the first time of having Ted die and being lost in the world, he talks about how long he had been on the planet Earth. And he mentions that the star revolved around the planet as opposed to the planet revolving around the star. And I just think that's indicative of his current mindset, because as such an intergalactic being, it's very obvious that planets revolve around stars. But in this human form, he's gotten to a point where he's kind of empathizing with the human mindset. Even though he calls it just a simulation, I think it's affecting him more than he thinks, where he's starting to see the sun revolving around the earth, which is very human-like. It was a weird way to phrase that I felt was very intentional.
Yeah, that's a thing that I had never considered until you brought it up. That the way the language is used about the revolutions of the planet and star, because this is a chapter that never gets old to me. I feel like I get something new out of it every time.
I can see why.
Yeah, I love that moment. And any time where it's kind of like humanizing him or introducing human elements are amazing to me, because he had no human elements until he basically made a simulated human brain for himself to understand what it's like to be us, so he could sow conflict more efficiently. But because he does this, he feels that emotion for the first time.
Crushed.
And like you said, he brings up that he says it's just a simulation, but this emotion he feels from his quote unquote simulation is driving what he's doing.
So it's a true emotion.
It's crazy.
That's so good. It's so good.
Ooh.
As I want to back it up, and as soon as like I found out that Bill was Scion, I freaked the fuck out.
It's like,
It clicks so much into my mind. It's like, of course. Jumping to the climax here,
oh god,
because I think we've said enough about the setup and how it's interesting, and we can talk about it endlessly, and I'm sure we'll think of some other things to say before we wrap up. But the meat and potatoes here is that Scion just goes on and fights for good. At this point of the chapter, I'm like, yeah, Scion, I believe in you. You are a force. You can be a true human. I had so much optimism back then.
Ooh.
And then I finished the chapter, and I was like, oh no. So the actual end of the world was Scion listening to Jack's words. We have to talk about Jack too, I guess, but the end goal is Jack criticizes Scion for not having creativity, for not creating art, for just being a blank slate. He says, you've done good for so long, but what has it really gotten you? If you want to truly evolve and experiment, basically, like that's how Scion's interpreting it. Why don't you try destruction and evil on for a change?
Because I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this, but like we have hammered in repeatedly, especially like in the Numberman and Bonesaw interludes, that whatever these things are that we now know it's the entities, Jack's mindset is so perfectly aligned with what their goal is. And here he is berating one of the entities themselves for not having the mindset.
Of an entity.
Yeah, he says, like, you are not, you do no experimentation, you have no creativity, and that's what the shards are here to do, to make these hosts experiment and create and try new things. And he says he berates Scion for not doing this, and Scion is like, shit, he's right.
He's fucking right. I like how, like, they get Scion out of the situation. Like, Lisette calls him, and he leaves, but it just lingers on him. He just keeps thinking about it. He's like, Jack called him out and appealed to both humanistic instincts of warring and destruction and using force, but also, and I think most interestingly, Jack reminded him what an entity's goal is, which is to destroy and evolve. And then he just destroys England. He just destroys the UK, just like that.
For the first time in a long time, he not only feels an emotion, but there's an element of satisfaction to it.
By the way, bonus, here's how I'm gonna make this a screenplay for fun, I think, and just release it out when we release this video. Here's how I picture that decision. He lands in the water where we first saw him.
Ooh.
And the camera's zooming into his face. And then we're getting splices of the earlier shots we saw, like the very first shots of the entities just like surviving and consuming in the void. And it's all kind of flashing back to him. And it's eventually he snaps and he turns around, destroys England, and he has like kind of a smile in his face that it's like a bit of a smirk that shows he's content a little bit about it's an expression that's hard to read. It's not quite happy, but he's feeling something.
And then it starts playing right back where we started from by Cleopatra from the extremely goofy movie VHS.
Exactly. It's so fitting. Oh man. Oh, Worm, you need to exist in film form.
We'll try to make it happen.
Jack, huh?
Man.
How about that Jack? Let's talk about the broadcaster.
Man, what happened to Jack? You know, I wouldn't wish that on... What happened to him, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but if I had to choose someone for it to happen to, probably be him.
You mean the infinite loop of getting pile-drived?
He's going to be getting his, like, intestines pulled out under, like, rocks under a mountain of containment foam for who knows how long.
You know what? No, fuck Jack. See, this is where we're different. Jack's like one of my favorite characters, but fuck him. He needs this.
Shit happens, bitch.
Shit happens, bitch. But you know what? He gets the last laugh.
Because at the end, he accomplished his objective. You know what? Congrats, Jack. I hope you're happy. I hope you're happy.
He introduced Scion to art, man.
I hope you're happy in your fucking time loop under your mountain of bullshit. You did it. You won. You ended the world. Congrats.
Like, Scion, have you heard of trap music?
And he's like, whoa.
Whoa, this shit kind of slaps. and then shit got bad, and I'm just like, what a note to end the chapter on, man. Because it ends with like he felt some sort of satisfaction or relief, and then he just turned around and destroyed another coast. And I am one chapter into 27, and slight spoiler alerts, this boy ain't stopping.
There's no brakes on this train.
Wow,
like,
dude.
Like until the last chapter, there's no more brakes here.
I want to say as soon as I started Worm, I said I think the final villain will be Scion. That'll be the final opponent.
Boom.
Now there's roughly 4 to 5 arcs left, so I think there's still time for me to be wrong because most arcs are 2 to 3.
Greg is still out there somewhere.
Greg is still out there. Cauldron is still out there. I don't fucking who else. Like I feel like Scion, like they can't hold him out for 5 arcs worth of content. He would blow up the planet.
It's just so funny to me because Willer has called them Bill and Ted for so long, whenever Scion began his rampage, we were talking about Kill Bill today, and I was like, oh my god, Worm just became Kill Bill.
I didn't realize how true that was until 27.1. We're literally dealing with Kill Bill here. Oh my god, man.
Speaking of Kill Bill, the reason we were talking about today is because Doofcast, formerly Daily Planet Podcast, has a really good Tarantino talk.
Yes. I gotta watch Kill Bill 2 and talk about it on this podcast so I can finally talk about Django.
We need to watch Kill Bill 2 together.
Yeah, let's do it. Man, it's such a good movie because it's like the first part sets up the bride, but then the second part characterizes her and Bill.
We'll get Joe in there for Kill Bill 2, and then we'll talk about that on the Roundabout cast. Have you heard of it?
Anyways, Worm is the coolest thing ever.
Like this, I can't think of a chapter in a different story that gives me quite the same feeling this one does. Like, even within Worm, this isn't my favorite chapter, but
That's crazy, man. I think it's mine.
It just gives me such a strange feeling of everything being connected that I just don't get anywhere else.
What is your favorite chapter?
Oh man, we're gonna here's what I'm thinking. In our final episode of this,
Gonna rank?
we'll give our top 5 ranks, and we can like explain why they place the way they do.
Top 5 chapters, arcs, and characters.
There you go.
It's coming.
That'll be it. I can already tell you who my favorite character is gonna be.
It's Rachel. I know you.
Obviously.
Or is it?
Or is it? It's actually Greg.
Of course.
God King Greg.
Did we do this justice?
You decide.
It's talking about it doesn't even sell how well written it was. We didn't even talk about how all the arc names so far have been communication terms. And how the next arc is called Extinction. How he broadcast to himself.
Oh man.
Oh man. Ooh.
This is just a chapter where even if someone told you that like this chapter was coming, you still would not see it coming. Like what actually it makes you feel.
The execution matters so much because like I opened it up with, on paper, I don't really want to bog down the power system in the specifics, yet this was the coolest thing in the story because it was executed so well. Not to mention the climax of it was just beautiful and horrifying.
It says like he says it so matter-of-factly and in only like 1 or 2 sentences where he basically shoots England and he says the island just crumples up like a piece of paper in a fist. And then it ends with him shooting out to the opposite coastline of the ocean, and you're like, oh, fuck.
The home of Kevin. Like, that's vindictive, even. So cold. All right. We did it. In a good time, because 20 minutes of this was just talking about the interludes.
Yeah, so...
We did good.
I don't know how exactly... I don't know in what way you're gonna edit these into the future episodes, but
this one will be split in 2.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Man, we got like 4 or 5 weeks of Worm content done in one night.
Not bad. It was a good fucking talk. No Joes allowed. No spoilers for Tyler.
Send your Worm questions to the Roundabout cast Snapchat.
I guess I gotta make that, huh?
You don't have to.
Until Bradley pro Jared's the step.
Oh no.
All right, goodbye everyone. Bradley would never do that, by the way.